I'm turning 21, so I thought I'd give you 21 book recommendations. The books I'm recommending fall within the genres of romance, fantasy, and I also have a few literary fiction and like one mystery book. I'm gonna start out with romance books, specifically one that I think is criminally underrated. That is Will They or Won't They by Ava Wilder. Lila and Shane are actors that play characters that are madly in love with each other on a very popular TV show. Unfortunately, in real life, they don't like each other. Lila left the show for a couple of seasons to find like bigger and better jobs, but she couldn't find any, so she's back for the 9th and final season. Since she is coming back to the show, there are a lot of eyes on them. So it's like a workplace rivals to lovers, but instead of going like to the office, they're going on set. I'm a big fan of this book, and I feel like no one ever talks about it. If you are a fan of Abby Jimenez, she has a quote on the front of this book. It says, "A sexy lovers to enemies to lovers romance that smolders then bursts into flames." Please read it, especially if you're into like Hollywood drama. Like, oh, I know if this happened in real life, like everybody would be posting like conspiracy theories like online, being like, oh, what do we think happened here? Like, do they actually hate each other? Do they love each other? What's going on? It'd be like Outer Banks drama. Since I just brought up Abby Jimenez, might as well talk about her again. Now, I feel like this book is very popular. I've seen a lot of people talk about it, and for good reason. This is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I will also say Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez, just as good. But I decided to just go with one book by her because I feel like more people will like Just for the Summer. My favorite kind of romance books are romance books that are like rom-com-y, but they have a lot of like emotional depth. That's exactly what this has. Emma and Justin meet through Reddit. He has a story that goes viral where he is convinced that every ex he has finds their true love after breaking up with him, like immediately after. Emma claims to also have this curse where every single one of her exes has found their true love after breaking up with her. The two think they will be able to break each other's curses if they date, and they'll find their true loves after. Every time I hear someone talk about this book, they always say like if he wanted to, he would, because Justin would. He really is just like the epitome of if he wanted to, he would. It's a fantastic book, okay, and I think this one is popular for a good reason. The next book I think you should read is Caught Up by Liz Tomford. This is the only book I've read by Liz Tomford, and it makes me want to read more. It is in a series of interconnected standalones. Our main character, Kai, is a single dad and the starting pitcher for Chicago's MLB team. His son is a baby, and the whole entire time I read this, I just imagined the cutest little baby in my head, and I think that made it so much better. This guy has like major trust issues and like doesn't think anyone is good enough to babysit his kid, but he obviously needs someone to do that. And that's where Miller comes in. Miller is the daughter of his coach, and she becomes the nanny of his child. He can't fire Miller because, you know, coach's daughter and all that. I feel like it's not even like just like a cute book because it's like really emotional, but like the relationship between the son and both Miller and Kai is so cute. Now let's talk about a more toxic book, Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. I'd say Magnolia is kind of like Sophia Richie, but like make it messy. Magnolia is the it girl. She is the daughter of a producer. The more I think about it, the more she has in common with Sophia Richie. Grange, she got married. She has an extremely toxic relationship with BJ. He is a model. They dated once upon a time, then something happened and they stopped dating. They constantly just like date other people to make the other person jealous instead of like talking through their feelings, which makes me understand why so many people don't like these books, but I love them. I truly think Magnolia and BJ belong together. There's really no question about it. I think they're soulmates. I think they're just messy. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't here for the drama. I'm a big fan of the drama. I think a lot of people really connect with these books because they're lyrically written. I think you could pull a lot of quotes from these books and make it into a song, and people would be like, oh my gosh, that's the best song ever written. This next book had me cheesing. Like, I would notice myself smiling while reading it because it's like a ray of sunshine, and that is When in Rome by Sarah Adams. Amelia is a pop star obsessed with Audrey Hepburn, specifically the film Roman Holiday. She decides she needs a break from being a pop star and decides to go to Rome, Kentucky because she's like, oh, might as well go to Rome. And then Rome, Kentucky is the Rome she goes to. Rome is a really small town, and her car breaks down in front of Noah's house. Her car breaks down in the middle of the night, so he offers her home to her. It is obviously a romance between the two. She's this big pop star and he's a small town baker. Their problems are so different, but they mesh so well. If you want a really cute rom-com, this one's for you. Now, I'm a big fan of this next author, and I'm going to recommend you the book that I think really got me into her books, and that is Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher. Now, this is technically the second book in the Dreamland Billionaire series, but they are interconnected standalones. So, You can technically read them in any order you want. I mean, most people read the books in order. The first book is the fine print, but I liked this book so much more than the fine print. So Declan's grandpa is basically Walt Disney. His grandfather passes and leaves him the role of CEO of like the family media empire. But there's a clause. He has to get married and have a child because that child will become the heir. That may not seem like a hard job for some people, but for Declan, it's like an impossible feat. He's just kind of rude. He's very like type A, keeps to himself. Everything needs to be done his way, and if it's not, like he's gonna throw a fit. Not even like throw a fit. He's just gonna let everybody know that he's angry. And you don't really want him to be angry with you. It's not a good feeling. They keep finding women to like marry him, and then they keep backing out. So then finally his assistant Iris is like, I'll do it because we get along. So they kind of have this fake relationship going on, and it's just so good. Now this next book I'm going to talk about is an Emily Henry book. They are very popular, and I didn't really get the hype until I read this book, and then I was like, oh wait, that's like really, really good. I've only read 3 Emily Henry books, but this one is my favorite, and that is Happy Place. Harriet and Wynne became a couple in college, and they dated for years. Every year, their friends get together, and they take like a week-long vacation at a cottage in Maine. I believe this is the last time they're taking that vacation because the cottage is about to be sold, and they don't want to break the news to their friends that they are no longer together. So even though they broke up 5 months ago, they pretend that they're still together to keep everybody else happy. We got some people pleasers up in here. Once again, the premise of this is very rom-com-y, but there's a lot of emotional depth to it. This book is written really well, and of course I'm recommending it to you. The last romance book I'm going to talk about is Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This series has taken over my life. This is quite the commitment though. If you go for this, you're committing to a 10-book series, and the books aren't all that short. They're fairly long. Not even fairly, the last book is like 800 pages. That being said, when you spend so much time with these characters, they become your second family. My brain logically knows that these are fictional people, but my heart tells me they're real. The first book, Addicted to You, follows Lily and Lo, who are best friends. They both struggle with addiction. Lily is addicted to sex, and Lo is addicted to alcohol. They both enable each other and pretend to date so that they can hide each other's addictions. Addiction is obviously a darker subject, but there's still humor in these books, and there's moments that will make you swoon. It's not all just like sad. There's a big found family aspect to these books, and I love that so much because reading about the interactions between like the core 6 just make my heart warm. Alright, next genre, let's get into fantasy books. The first fantasy book I want to talk about is Defy the Night by Bridget Kimmerer. Now, I have something I want to show you. I was at Half Price Books the other day, and I found Fairy Loot editions of the first 2 books in the series. They are signed, and they have like the reverse dust jackets. This one also has like one of those like ribbon bookmarks. I don't think I've ever been so excited to see books in a store. The gasp I gasped when I saw this was like unreal. I think my mom was concerned. This is the second book, and they weren't that expensive. I was so excited to see this because I love this book so much. And the sequel, of course. I wasn't even looking for it. I was about to check out, and then like just something in the corner like caught my eye, and then I went over there and then saw these and like freaked out. I freaked out. I was so excited. Anyway, let me give you a synopsis on this book so then you will want to read it and then understand why I'm so excited. There is an illness in the kingdom / like town of Candela. Who knows? It is this deadly illness, and it appears like the only way to survive from it is the Moonflower Elixir. But only the wealthy people are able to have it. Tessa lives in an area where no one can really afford it, and even when they get it, it's like such a small ration that it doesn't really help. So Tessa steals moonflower petals and makes the elixir on her own and then gives it to those that are in need. Now our other main character, Prince Korik, has to serve as the king's justice. So he's like the punisher of those who get in trouble. He must strike fear into the heart of his kingdom because there is a shortage of elixir and there's threats of a rebellion. Soon Tessa and Korik are face to face with like an impossible choice. And maybe a spark. Please, I beg you, read it if you haven't already. Now, I'm going to talk to you about another book that is criminally underrated, and that is Kiss of the Selkie by Cassandra Odette. Technically, this is the 3rd in a series of standalones, but they're standalones. You can read it without reading the first 2 books. And honestly, I think you should pick it up without reading the first 2, because it is so incredible. To evade a vicious sea queen's clutches, Selkie Maisie hides on land, surviving as a thief. But when she rescues a human from drowning and illegally brings him to the shore, she must answer for breaking the Fae law. As punishment, she'll have to hunt down the man she saved and kiss him. But with a kiss that can kill, Maisie's mission means more than seduction. It means murder. Son of a notorious Fae killer, Dorian was never meant to survive the shipwreck that was orchestrated to assassinate him. Now that he's on the Forbidden Fae Isle, he'll do anything to gain citizenship, even marry a Fae bride. Desperate for a hasty marriage, he holds a bridal competition in the Isle's most theatrical city, where displays of frivolity aren't just encouraged, they're expected. And if Maisie can act like a proper debutante and join the pageantry, she'll get near enough to deliver her fatal kiss. But getting close to her target brings complications she didn't expect. As she pretends to compete for Dorian's heart, it starts to feel less like an act and more like falling in love. If Maisie doesn't deliver her kiss by sunrise on the last day of the competition, she forfeits her life. But if she succeeds, Dorian dies. When the pageant ends, will there be a true victor or only death and broken hearts? I just felt like I could read the back better than come up with my own synopsis. So, this is one of my favorite books. Not even exaggerating. I mean, a lot of these books are my favorites. The first true fantasy book I read was Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. What a good way to start. This book is so great. That being said, since it was my first fantasy book, it's been a hot minute since I read it. I remember having the fattest crush on Jace Ballinger, who is like the main guy from this. I read it my freshman year of college and had like this letter board, and I think I wrote on it like Live, Laugh, Love, Jace Ballinger or something like that. What did I write? I actually might have a photo of it. YA fantasy, I should probably read the back again. A formidable outlaw family that claims to be the first among nations. A son destined to lead thrust suddenly into power. 3 fierce young women of the Rotan, the Queen's premier guard. A legendary street thief leading a mission determined to prove herself. A dark secret that is a threat to the entire continent. When outlaw leader meets reformed thief, a cat and mouse game of false moves ensues, bringing them intimately together in a battle that may cost them their lives and their hearts. I need to reread this, honestly. It was really good. Also, hello cover. I love the cover. I'm pretty sure this book is enemies to lovers and like the stakes are really high, which so great. You know, there's life and death situations in here, which there's a quote from Stephanie Garber on the back. I know that she really loves Mary E. Pearson's books. She said, a brilliant fantasy with a boldly beating heart. Mary E. Pearson is a fearless storyteller. I'm still trying to catch my breath from this book. If you like Stephanie Garber, just know this is what she likes. So, basically just saying you should read it. Speaking of Miss Stephanie Garber, let's talk about Caraval. Now, I wasn't originally going to put this in this video, but then my friend was reading it and like sending me like video snaps of her reading it and saying like all of her theories. I then realized how much fun this is, and like listening to all of her thoughts while reading this book and like knowing what was gonna happen, but like hearing what she thought was gonna happen was so entertaining for me. And it also brought me back to when I was reading this and I was like, wait, this world is so magical and so fun. The game of Caraval is played once a year and Scarlett has wanted to play it all her life. Scarlett is about to enter an arranged marriage, which means she only has like one last chance to play the game of Caraval. Scarlett's sister Tella is kidnapped and is like the thing that you must find to win the game of Caraval. So everybody wants to find Tella to win, but like the stakes are much higher for Scarlett because she's worried about her sister's safety and other people don't really care. Also, the winner wins a wish and it can be anything they want. Overall, it's this magical world with a lot of twists and turns, and I thought it was so very entertaining, but it was almost more entertaining listening to my friend's thoughts of what was gonna happen because she was wrong. I was having a heyday with that because she was like, I'm 85% sure this is what's going on, and she was so confident, and she was just dead wrong. I'm trying to not repeat authors, but I really want to recommend Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I loved this series so much. I love it more than Caraval. It is like, if you had to pick between Caraval and this series, I'd say go for this one, but honestly, read both. These do take place in the same world. You do not have to read Caraval to read this, but there are some like minor spoilers of Caraval in this book. Evangeline is in love, but the love of her life is going to marry another woman. Evangeline wants to stop the wedding, so she goes to the Prince of Hearts and is like, please help me stop this wedding. And he's like, okay, but he asks for 3 kisses to be given at the time and place of his choosing. But after Evangeline's first promise kiss, she learns that bargaining with an immortal is a dangerous game, and that the Prince of Hearts wants far more from her than she pledged. Very magical world, and I feel like the big appeal of these books is Jax, the Prince of Hearts. Everyone he kisses on the lips dies, if they are not his true love. So the poor guy kept like falling in love with people and then kissing them, and then they would die because they weren't his one true love. He's immortal, so this has happened so many times, and he's morally gray. He's morally gray. He's him. He's him. He really is. He is top tier. Just that. Just top tier. Now I need to replace my camera battery, so the angle might change ever so slightly. Alright, the next book is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. Our main character, Elspeth, has an ancient mercurial spirit trapped in her head. This is a gothic fantasy. Seems kind of scary, but it's really not because he kind of protects her and like keeps her secrets. There's dark magic infecting the kingdom of Blunder, and she goes on a quest to like cure the kingdom of Blunder of the dark magic. She does this quest, of course, with the king's nephew, captain of the most dangerous men in Blunder, and guilty of high treason. So it's kind of like this spooky romantasy, and there's like a lot of fun little aspects to it. There's like these magical cards, which I don't really know how to describe them, but the cards themselves like possess power, and if you have a card, you can use its power. This is a fantastic little duology. Definitely read it. This next book is more of a dystopian book, and I think a lot of people are familiar with it, but I think they're more familiar with the rest of the series rather than just this book, and that is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. So this is the prequel to The Hunger Games. It's so good! If you're someone that has not had their Hunger Games hyperfixation yet, now is a good time to read this because the next prequel is coming out in March. It will follow the 50th Hunger Games, which is a quarter quell, and it's Haymitch's game. You want to know why he's all messed up? Read the book when it comes out. But this one follows the 10th Hunger Games. It is a prequel that follows an 18-year-old Coriolanus Snow, who is President Snow. It's kind of like his villain origin story, and like reading his thoughts, they're really dark. I did see the movie before I read this book, but after I read the book, I watched the movie like 7 times, not exaggerating. These are the first games that introduce mentors, and Coriolanus is the mentor of Lucy Gray. He is secretly poor and needs to prove that he's a good mentor, because if he's deemed like the best mentor, he wins a scholarship. I think now I'll go for like literary fiction, kind of. I don't really know what genre this book is besides literary. It's a utopia as well, so I guess utopian, isn't that a genre? I don't know. This is In Watermelon Sugar by Richard Brodigan. I assume a lot of you don't know, I'm a really big Harry Styles fan, and he apparently wrote Watermelon Sugar after reading this book. So I of course had to read it, and look, here I am recommending it to you. I read this quite a while ago, and I feel like I don't talk about it enough. It is a utopia where everything is made of watermelon sugar. This book is very short, and I feel like the best way to describe it is that I just imagine a sweet old man reading this book, and you don't really know much about him, but like the way it's written, it's just all I can imagine. It's just this sweet old man. In watermelon sugar, the deeds were done and done again, as my life is done in watermelon sugar. I'll tell you about it because I am here and you are distant. This book is really short. The chapters are really short. Some of them are that short, and that's it. Some of them are a couple of pages. Most of them are just like 1 page long, and like not everything is very clear, but this book felt oddly comforting. The writing is just kind of weird. If I remember correctly, we don't know the main character's name, and I was kind of like, I don't really understand why we don't know his name, but it fits. I'm gonna read the back for you because it's so hard to describe. It says, Ideth is a place where the sun shines a different color every day and where people travel to the length of their dreams. Rejecting the violence and hate of the old gang at the Forgotten Works, they lead gentle lives in watermelon sugar. In this book, Richard Brodigan discovers and expresses the mood of the counterculture generation. I feel like you just have to like pay attention to the part where it says they lead gentle lives in watermelon sugar. They are so gentle. It's almost kind of like a mundane utopia that is just so comforting to me. I really like this. You can read it in a day. Like, go for it. As I mentioned earlier, I tried to grab books by different authors, but now I have like 4 books all by the same author to like tell you about, because I couldn't just pick 1 or 2 by that author. I had to pick all 4. I think a lot of people are really familiar with the first 2 books I talk about, but I truly could not just pick like 1 book to talk about. The first being such a basic book that I feel like so many people have already read, but it's so good. That is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Evelyn Hugo is like Elizabeth Taylor and like Marilyn Monroe. Like, She's this huge actress in the 50s and she had 7 husbands. This tells the story of her life. I googled multiple times, is Evelyn Hugo a real person? It's like her life story and why she had 7 husbands and like what purpose they served in her life. It's quite the story. One of the first books I read when getting into reading, and I'm so happy I did. This next book, of course, is Daisy Jones and the Six. If someone asks me what my favorite book is, I will always respond with Daisy Jones and the Six. I've read it multiple times. It's completely annotated and it's become such a comforting book for me. This whole book only consists of dialogue, which I feel like that makes it really easy to read and like such a quick book to do, because you don't have to read about like boring actions. Like, no, you don't have to worry about that. It's like a name and then it's just all dialogue, which I think is so interesting. It's about a band from the late 1960s and 70s. Once again, this had me Googling whether or not the characters were real because I was so convinced this was nonfiction. All of the characters in this book are giving interviews, so they all have differing accounts as to what happened, and a lot of the times the characters are unreliable and telling different stories. It was made into a TV show starring Sam Claflin, Riley Keough, Suki Waterhouse, stacked cast. And I have to say, watching that show for the first time and listening to the album that came along with the show for the first time will like forever be ingrained in my head. A fun little fact is that Taylor Jenkins Reid's books all like take place in the same world, and sometimes a little character may be in all 4 books that I'm going to talk about today. Because the next one is Malibu Rising. This book takes place in the 80s, and I think it takes place all in one day. This is about a super famous family that throws like annual end of the year parties. The family is like really famous, like kind of like Kardashian level famous. They are Nepo babies. There's a lot of familial things being worked through, and I believe by the end of the night, yeah, it says the mansion goes up in flames. The night they have to choose what they will keep from the people who made them and what they will leave behind. I feel like every book Taylor Jenkins Reid puts her hands on turns to gold. She has that Midas touch that just makes a book amazing. She does have 4 books I'm not talking about in this video that are just like her romance books, but I like the like historical famous people type of book more. The last Taylor Jenkins Reid book I'm going to talk about is Carrie Soto is Back. She has another book coming out this summer and I'm so excited for it. I think it comes out in like, it might be July. Maybe late June, July, I don't know. But I'm so thrilled. But let's talk about this one, of course. This one takes place in the 90s. We have Carrie Soto, who is featured heavily in this book. She is a world famous tennis player. She is now retired and holds multiple records, but after 6 years of retirement, someone new may take her record for like the most championships won. So she comes out of retirement to like face off against that newcomer. This is really hard for her because she's like old now, old to be playing tennis. All of her books just like tug at my heartstrings. Now the 21st recommendation will be Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. This is a YA mystery. Ellingham Academy is a famous private school for like gifted children. It was founded by some millionaire, he might be a billionaire, for the brightest and best students. Unfortunately, in like the 1930s, there were multiple murders that happened at the school, making it even more famous. The mystery of what happened was never solved until Stevie comes in and is like, hey guys, I'm gonna go to the school, and what my special talent or like research project is gonna be what happened, because all we know is that the person referred to themselves as like truly devious. There's kind of like 2 timelines going on in this book. There's the 1930s, the night of like the murders, and there's present day Stevie who is trying to solve that. It appears Truly Devious like came back to like get Stevie because they don't want Stevie to like reveal what's going on. Anyway, it's a very entertaining book and the first in a series. That is all I have for today. I hope you liked this video. If you would like, comment, and subscribe, I would very much appreciate it. I will see you at some point or another. Bye!